What's up, legends? Welcome back to day 2 of Tune Crew's third takeover. I hope you've had a ripper Saturday and Shiva sent you wild deep into the night. Welcome to the Sunday sesh. I'm gonna be easing you in today, a bit like maybe Sean did yesterday with the ambient tunes, but with a little bit more conversation. So my name is Divi A, or Divi for short, and this is my van Spoons. Spoons, say hi. There she is. Anyway, I'm here today because I'm going to be talking about and sharing pieces of my debut album, which is called Moments of Clarity. That's what I've been working on, and it's going to be released on November 24th of this year. And how this all really started is, in 2020, I experienced an awakening of sorts, where I acknowledged that I'm in love with not just music, but the medium of sound. And I decided in that absolute, moment of clarity, for the lack of a better term, that I want to dedicate the rest of my life towards learning more about sound, creating sound, and also sharing whatever comes from my exploration to help change how all of us listen. So 8 months ago, I sold or donated almost everything I owned to live nomadically in my van and make music from beautiful places. So today I wanted to get onto this live stream and do this because putting my name behind a piece of audio has honestly always been my biggest fear. It's really annoying that life tends to put our greatest rewards behind our deepest insecurities, but I'm starting to figure out that I think that's how it works. So I decided this year that I'm just going to face my biggest fears and actually just chase this love for sound. So yeah, I think maybe talking about this album, how it's come about, with a group of open-minded listeners might just give me the confidence I need to push forward. So thank you so much for being here. I'm also just really curious to see what feelings or moods these drafts evoke, this music evokes. And yeah, I'd love to also just get some feedback on some creative choices I'm stuck on. So just a little heads up though, this is not being streamed live if you haven't worked it out yet. I recorded this video in Yungabara, which is this beautiful town I'm staying in the Atherton Tablelands, in the mountains behind Cairns. The reason I'm here is I just find the music flows like water next to this one lake called Tinaroo, so that's where I'm going to be writing my album from. But yeah, I couldn't do this live due to the nomadic nature of it all, because I can't be sure of where I'm going to be on a given day or how the internet's going to hold up. And I don't want to put you through the whole bad reception thing. But anyway, I'm live in the comments somewhere here, so I'm here to chat. One quick note about the BNE Tune Crew before I start. When Blair Singleton, Ben Polson, and I created a small chat room at work to share bangers and called it the BNE Tune Crew, we had no idea it would grow to become something so beautiful. So we're a collective of friends who just love to share music and support each other with our sonic explorations. So yeah, for an event like this though, it always takes that one person in the group who has equal parts proactiveness and equal parts just pure swag to muster up the group, bring people together, and do it with style. So that man today is Gulam Temple. Take a bow, man, and also anyone else who's helped him. I think it's safe to say that this event has been a little well organized than Fire Festival. Also, as part of the event, of course, if you haven't already, please consider donating to the Ovarian Cancer Research Foundation. The link is in the chat and also below if you're watching the recording. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So, in this video, I wanted to, for the first time, share 3 concepts or pillars this album is based on, 3 previews of tracks I'm working on, and 3 questions I'm stuck with that I would love to get your feedback on. So, in terms of these pillars, these are the 3 kind of things that have come to my mind that I keep going back to every time I think about how to creatively approach this music making process, especially with the minimalist setup that I have. So the first one is about writing stories, not tracks. So in the past, I used to actually, back in uni and just after university, I used to freelance as a sound designer for amateur theater productions, films, and just audiovisual experiences. And yeah, I helped tell stories through sound. So I was able to work with the director, understand their vision, and complete and export original music by the deadline, or sometimes scarily close to the deadline. But the hurdle is that I've always struggled to finish music for myself. Whenever I sat down to make a track, it just felt kind of directionless, and I was drowning in a sea of options. And it would just sit in this nice 8 or 16 bar loop, which sounded maybe good on its own, but I couldn't really figure out how to arrange it, even though I technically knew how. So it was like a mental block, and this ended up becoming an insecurity of mine, a psychological hurdle that I've really been struggling to cross, to be honest. But fast forward to week 3 of van life, when I met an Aboriginal man called Charlie, and this started to change.
The stories through my didgeridoo to my artwork. So sitting there and passing them stories on to the next generation, because it's getting so much multicultural technology, Facebook and Instagram and all that. But just sitting there and having a good old yarn and a good old conversation, you'd be surprised where it might take you,
I was going through some hardships at the time, and he seemed to sense it, and he just asked me to lie down so he could play the didgeridoo on my head for 20 minutes to heal me. And till date, it is one of the most healing and therapeutic sessions or things I've ever experienced. He started telling me short stories while playing the didge in between. For example, he would describe how a snake moved through the grass, and then he would play the didge in an accompanying fashion, things like that. So yeah, he said that the indigenous community had been combining stories and sound for thousands of years. Can I ask you something, Charlie?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think for a listener, when we hear the story, it changes how we listen to the same sound?
Yes. You would have seen that, like with the storytelling and the sound of the didgeridoo.
Yeah.
You click off right away. So like if I play a tune, you'll know straight away. What is this?
Okay.
What was that?
Kangaroos and baby kangaroos.
Yes, see, you know straight away.
In other words, it would forever change how I listen. And he was right. I mean, of course he was right. So when I was reflecting on how to tackle this fear, I realized that I was able to finish music for those directors because they were all trying to tell stories, I would share a draft soundtrack for a scene, they would listen to it while reading the script or play during a rehearsal, and boom, like music had been made. But when I sat down to create, I wasn't trying to tell stories, I was just trying to create tracks. And they weren't going anywhere because, they had nowhere to go. So for this album, I've taken a leaf out of Charlie's book. I dug deep and I wrote 7 stories. So these are true stories that have happened to me. They're extremely personal, which definitely doesn't make anything easy, but I think gives me a good well of passion to draw from. So yeah, what these stories are is they're a collection of recent moments that were turning points in my life, moments that made me feel something, and moments where my next step became just ever so clear. In other words, moments of clarity. So every time I need creative direction on the texture, the structure, or the style of the track, what I've been doing is I just go back and consult my story that I've written, much like I used to consult my directors. The second pillar that the album is based on is about using sounds from the present to tell stories from the past. So I'm in love with sound, like the very medium of it. I don't mean that I'm in love with music. Music is just organized sound, 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 organized sound. Music is just organized sound. And it's my current fascination, but I mean that I love sound at a frequency and vibration level. This makes me very sensitive to the acoustic environments that I'm in. For example, if I go to a restaurant, I can't always remember the colors or what it looked like, but I always remember what it sounds like. Sound makes me very nostalgic, it can take me straight back to a time, a memory, or a place. And I think a lot of us have that. And sometimes when I cook, I can taste frequencies as well. For example, limes and salt, they sound like high frequencies to me. Spices are mids, bacon is bass. I don't know, does anyone else have this? Let me know in the chat if you're equally weird. And I don't just mean when you're on acid, I mean normally. But in a similar way, a certain sound or a collection of sounds makes me feel a certain way, like it's trying to tell a part of a story. So recently I've been immersed in my van, and as I write the stories for the album, and the sounds of my van, this thing is a musical instrument, and the sounds of nature, they've really become the soundtrack to my nomadic life. I love the sounds my band makes, like from the slam of the door to the bungee cords that hold my house in place while I swing past a roundabout, to the different sonic creatures that it attracts. I've been recording these sounds and using it as a palette with which to tell the stories of this album. So, yeah, therefore, I'm using the sounds from the present to tell stories from the past. The third pillar that it's based on is it's about reconnecting with my roots. So, two-thirds of my life have been in India, and it's definitely had an influence on my taste. So, I'm weaving in sounds from home, and they've really been resonating with me lately, especially Indian percussion. I also spent a lot of my childhood on trains in India. They would have these foldable berths that would save space during the daytime. And inspired by that idea, I've actually installed a folding bed in my van with chains and everything. So every night when I get into bed, the clinking of the chains, the lowering of the bed, climbing into it, it reminds me of that Indian childhood on a train. And for this reason, one of the motifs throughout the album is the sounds of the Indian train. I'm especially inspired by how Paul Kalkbrenner, one of my favorite German producers, sampled the nostalgic sound of the Berlin train. Not just in the melody, but even in like the beat sounds train inspired. So this has inspired me to make a similar version for Indian trains. This is how I recreated mine. So that brings us to the tracks I'm working on. Time for me to shut up and actually play some of this music. I do recommend headphones or speakers because these tracks are not fully mixed and mastered just yet, which means like it's not really going to be popping out of your MacBook speakers or phone speakers just yet. So we'll start with the intro. This one is the intro to the album, and I was initially just going to call it intro, but recently I've been playing with the name Turmeric Stains because it's like reminiscent of that Indian childhood. I don't know. Let me know in the chat if you think that name suits or if you have another name you like, or if intro is just nice. This is an exception to the rest of the album because it's not exactly based on a story. Rather, it's like a little collage of sounds I've been exposed to introduce you to the palette that the album's made from, you know? From that recreated Indian train to a flute recording from this Aussie guy I met on the beach in Agnes Water who played the Indian Bansuri flute. What are the odds? And yeah, he jumped in my van and I recorded him. And I was like, as soon as he was recording, I was like, this is the intro. And to that familiar sound that helps Aussies cross the road. Have a listen. thanks for listening. This is very odd and awkward to do without like a live audience. But anyway, moving on to the second one. The second song is the title track of the album. It's called Moments of Clarity. And it's inspired by the moment I referred to briefly in the start of the call. I went back home to Bangalore, my childhood home, for a holiday. And perhaps it was something to do with being back in the bed that, I grew up in, like in my teenage years and things, but I can't really describe what happened next. I was just flicking through YouTube, watching some trash, and suddenly I just sat up, shut my laptop, and felt like my soul kind of slapped me, which is why the song starts with this big like slap and dramatic sound, and it keeps repeating throughout the track because it's like that sound that I felt of my soul slapping me. And it just kind of said without words but so clearly, mate, what are you doing? You said you'd work that job for 2 years and then quit and use those skills to continue on and study Ableton and continue to get better in music production. That's what you love. It's now been 5 years. You've earned enough money. You've learned what you needed to. It's time to leave. It's time to also maybe leave Australia and quench your thirst to meet people, experience different places. You've been here for 10 years. And like try and find the best Ableton school in the world and just like chase your path. So in 30 seconds, I found the school I was looking for. I got goosebumps when I saw my teacher. It kind of felt like I found my guru. And in that moment, I felt this extreme duality. I felt on the one hand, this weight of the very hard, real decisions that I knew I was going to have to take ahead. And at the same time, I felt this lightness of my soul finally relaxing, knowing that it had pushed this thought into my conscious mind that it had been trying to do for a while when every time I'm suppressing it with coffee or work or YouTube or something stupid. And it made me finally consciously aware of like this left turn that I needed to take in order to get back on my path, perhaps. So yeah, this track takes me back to that original moment of clarity. Cool. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked it. Um, Still very much in draft, but yeah, I guess it kind of feels good to share. All right, this last one is also the most unfinished one. It's called Blessings in Disguise. And what this song is about the rest of the year that was 2020. You know, after the awakening, you think when you're sitting in that bed, yeah, everything's gonna work out and be so smooth. But the reality of it is, oh my God, life can really teach you a lesson when it wants to. You know. So I came back to Sydney with this like fire and looking back, real aggression. With my decisions and like, okay, this is what I don't know. This voice said to do. I'm just gonna do it, and I'm the one in control. And I think life has a beautiful way of reminding us that we're not the ones in control. So I came back and I made a series of really like tough decisions super quickly, like blindsided the girlfriend I was with, trying to explain this revelation through tears, and it didn't go well. I had a really bad breakup. Tried to work with an immigration lawyer to like get my US visa lined up so I could move to LA to join the school I found. Printed my resignation letter to like quit work and just like go for it. But yeah, COVID struck, so obviously that US visa interview didn't happen. The job became something I had to hold on to because all of my savings dwindled with, the economic crash of COVID. And suddenly I was freaking out and I was really not in a good headspace. So I went for this one crazy run back in March 2020, just before the borders and stuff started to close. And this is why the song starts with the sound of me running, which, by the way, is made by me singing, sitting in the van going, you'll hear it. It's hilarious. But yeah, I went for this run and I hit my usual like 5Ks, started to tear up, but just wanted to keep going, hit 7, 9, 10. And then I ran right into that girlfriend the one who I just had to unfortunately end up splitting up with. And it was cold, it was horrible. I was like, what is this mess I've made? And I thought, well, even if my US visa interview's cancelled, at least I go to Melbourne and can clear my head and get out of Sydney for a bit. 12Ks, I just crashed, pulled out my phone, and I got a text saying my flight to Melbourne was cancelled as well. So I just hit rock bottom, and, I called my dad and he said, just go where makes you happy. So I went to Brisbane for a week and I ended up not coming back to Sydney at all. And everything started to slowly work out in the most beautiful way. Blessings in disguise. Like my work made me redundant, so I was given a little payout that helped me catch my breath. I became an online student of that school for 1/10 the price. I met someone working from their computer in a van, and I realized that alternative living is a reality and it's something I could totally do. And I think the best of all is that girlfriend from Sydney, she gave me a call months later and forgave me and said she understood why I did what I did and wished me luck and told me that she was actually on my team. And it's something that I'll always respect her immensely for. So that feeling of everything working out in the end in the most unexpected way and problems actually being blessings in disguise is what, this track was inspired by. Now, before I play it, this is, as I said, the most unfinished. In the second half, I always imagine my friend Harsh Sharma, a guy who raps back in Bangalore under the name Young Daku, Hindi for Young Thug, best fucking name on the internet. I always imagine his voice rapping on it. I can't rap and my Hindi's terrible. So I've got this like template of the groove rhyme scheme with gibberish. So it sounds so bad on its own. But I guess, even sharing things at this very nascent stage might be healthy for me and hopefully interesting for you. So just keep an eye out for that it's not really close to finished. And I'm going to get a collaboration on it. But I'll stop talking. Here it is. Thanks for listening. रात में बात के साथ साथ में हाथ हाथ है बात में तुम पिताप में बुम इताप में पुत बाप में हरे हरे रात में फंसा के साथ में हाथ में फंसा के बुम फंसा के मचा के why is it a blessing in disguise? You don't know why it's a blessing in disguise, and you're none the wiser. A blessing in disguise, chal rise, chal rise, chal rise, chal. It's a blessing in disguise, chal. हरे हरे रात में बात के साथ में हाथ है बात में तुम किताब में तुम इताब में पुत बात में हरे हरे रात में फंसा के साथ में हाथ में फंसा के फंसा के मचा के was a blessing in disguise. I don't know why I was a blessing in disguise, and you're not the wiser. A blessing in disguise, chal rise, chal rise, chal rise, chal. It's a blessing in disguise, chal. Hare hare raat mein baat ke saath Alright, sweet. I guess those are that's the album preview done. I do have 3 questions that I would love to get your feedback on. So there's a form in the chat, and the image below as well. So if you're watching the recording, I would love to get your thoughts on a few things. My first question is, how would you prefer to learn about the stories? As you could tell, I'm still trying to figure out how to package and share the stories in a way that is authentic yet succinct and interesting. So yeah, my question to you is, do you have a preference? Would you maybe like to learn about the stories through a little 1-minute Instagram video for each song, or a website where you can read about the stories while you listen to the music, or a Spotify Music Plus talk show, which is a new feature where they have you can mix podcasts with music. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you think. Or of course, if the stories don't really matter to you at all, that's a perfectly valid answer too. So that's the first question. The second one is, when would you like to hear the stories, if you are interested in I guess hearing the stories behind the songs? Is it before listening, while listening, or after listening? And my third question is a bit of an open-ended one, but it's, what feelings did the music invoke? You can either, there's a little text box so you can just type. You can either, talk about a certain song or all of them in general. If there was a common theme, or just any emotions that you kind of felt, again, if any at all, while listening. I would just love to learn what it's making other people feel. Of course, if you have any other comments, suggestions, feedback, just want to get in touch, there's a box, just type it in, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Means the world if you can help me out with this. And the last one is, if you'd like to enter your email ID, I'd love to keep in touch and keep you posted with the album release as well. But that brings us to the end of this little sneak peek. Thank you so much for listening to my sound-related rambles. It really, really means a lot that you showed up to support me while I talk about my music production side for the first time. Or if you don't know who I am and you were just glancing through and you decided to stay till the end, thank you. I can promise you that the man that's up next, Sai, who goes by Sabutai, he will do a lot less talking and have a lot more music, so stay tuned. I've had the pleasure of mixing with this guy, and I can assure you that he's an absolute storyteller as well. I'm so excited to hear his mix, as I am with everyone else on the lineup today. So yeah, if you'd like to stay connected, I'm continuing to share this music making nomadic journey of Moments of Clarity via Instagram and Facebook. If you want to hear any of my previous mixes or mashups I have up in anticipation for the album release, you can find me on SoundCloud. And I also just love talking about and sharing any kind of sonic knowledge I've accumulated. So I have a little free course on YouTube, well, 2 free courses, to help anyone get started by DJing on Tractor or making your own mixes and mashups on Ableton. So you can find me on YouTube if you want to learn and get started with your audio journey. Shout out to my boys Prayansh and Shiva, who are on this lineup and I've had the pleasure to help introduce to the dark arts. And lastly, a huge thank you to anyone that's bought me a beer via my Buy Divi A Beer page. These beers legit directly help fund my dreams. Quick shout out to my recent supporter Valentino, who wanted to contribute to a new clutch I had to buy for spoons. And mate, I think about you every time I switch gears. So thank you so much. Thanks again for tuning in. Keep an eye out for November 24th. That's when Moments of Clarity will be live. Over to you, Sai. Take it away.